Hello there, and welcome to something completely different. This time I'm going to be using the Ranker website to rank the Final Fantasy VII Remake levels. Now you may be wondering, why am I just doing the levels, why not do the characters or blah blah blah? Well, I just want to do the levels because they're short, they're simple, they're easy, and plus I just really wanted to give my own personal thoughts on each individual level. I'll be ranking them from S tier to all the way to F tier because F tier is the worst, but honestly there's not really many that would fit F tier because all the levels are really good in their own unique way. F tier doesn't really mean that they're bad, they're just the weakest. While S tier is obviously the best of the best, it's the ones that cannot be topped, they're just so good. Now, without further ado, I'm going to go through each individual level of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is, by the way, my favourite game of 2020. I absolutely love this game, and I think it's a fantastic remake and a fantastic game overall. And I'll be going through which levels I think are better than the others, which levels are weaker than the others, and really discussing why I don't like or do like certain aspects to them. So, let's get started with Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is simply the bombing mission, and already I'm just going to put it right towards the top. It's a great starting level. It's just nostalgic. I don't know what else to say. I just love the nostalgia I had from this level, and it improves from the original. It gives you a little bit more to do, but it also just... I just love this level. It's just really good. It's a nostalgic level. It's a blast of a level. You get to really get to grips with the characters, or Cloud in particular. You fight relatively easy enemies at first, and of course it ends with the big boss fight. And of course, if you don't know what the hell you're doing, you're most likely going to die a lot, or you're going to get severely injured a lot. But overall, the level progression is quite nice, in my opinion. You start off with these relatively easy soldiers, the Shinra soldiers, and you progress through. Then you meet the dogs. The dogs are a little bit more tougher, they're a little bit more agile, and getting the player to be a bit more experienced with the sort of enemies they're going to fight. And then you're going to fight some sentries, and sentries are pretty tough because they're out of sight. So you're going to need to use another character, a character that can use ranged attacks. So it really does a good way of teaching the player how to play the game, while also using different characters for different respective enemies, and sort of progressing the difficulty up until the boss fight with the Scorpion, which is just a great boss fight. It's a great beginning boss fight. You obviously escape the facility, the reactor, I should say, when it starts to explode, and you fight a bunch more enemies, some more tougher enemies, such as shock troopers, which are much more faster, more agile, and they can dodge your attacks, teaching the player that, yes, there are enemies that will dodge your attacks, that will avoid taking damage from you, and they're going to be tougher. It's a great way of progressing, and it's a great way of teaching the player how to play the game. It's also a very nostalgic level because, anyone who's ever played the original Final Fantasy VII will know that this level is, well, it's iconic, really. It's borderline iconic. It is the beginning of the game. It is the beginning of the story. I do like some of the banter with some of the characters. I do like the fact that Jesse, in particular, really likes Cloud. And, of course, Barrett is like, Cloud is just a soldier. He's, he was a part of the enemy. He doesn't have any trust in him yet, and I do like that aspect. Admittedly, I do find the escaping bit a little bit tedious because, obviously, Jessie, she's sort of like the damsel in distress in this game. She does a lot of stupid shit and then gets herself hurt, and you then have to go over and rescue her, which is kind of annoying. Which is why I'm not going to put it in S tier. I'm going to put it in A tier because overall it's a decent level. It's a very good level, in fact. It's fantastic, but there are just those little gremlins which I think sort of ruin the level for me. Chapter 2 is what I like to call a slightly pointless level. It's a level that should have been connected with another level. It's not a bad level by any means, but it should have just been part of Chapter 1. This should have been like the ending part of Chapter 1, because once again you fight another boss. Once again you go through a bunch of enemies, each enemy becoming tougher than the last. But overall it feels way too short and way too pointless in a way. I don't get how later levels you'll see later on are so good at allowing multiple areas, allowing multiple moments, and yet this one level has to be a separate level instead of a part of the first chapter. Like, if this was a part of the first chapter, this would have been fine. But because it's its own chapter and because it is kind of a filler chapter, dare I say, it's not particularly that interesting. I mean, I guess there are some moments which I do like. I like the fact that you do see Sephiroth for this moment. It was certainly a surprise. And I do like the fact that, Cloud does have some PTSD, especially when he sees, a burning building, reflecting on what happens in Nibelheim, although we haven't seen that bit yet. I do like that Cloud, when he first meets Aerith, there's a little bit more of an interaction as opposed to, just this random flower girl who he meets and buys a flower for free, or one gil. I do like that there's a little bit more there, and I do like the aspect that only Aerith and Cloud can see these whispers where no one else can, and I do like that. That interconnection in that one little bit. I do like that short moment. But overall, this is kind of a, A to B sort of level. You get from point A to point B, and that's it. There's not really anything to it. It's not a bad level, but it's definitely going towards D tier. It's kind of a filler level. That's all I gotta say. It's a filler level. So, yeah. Chapter 3 is our first really big level. Essentially, Cloud is staying overnight at Sector 7, and he's, meets Tifa again. He hasn't seen Tifa for years, 5 years to be precise. And the last time they met was when Nibelheim was burnt to the ground, thanks to Sephiroth. But so, yeah, there was that sort of connection with Tifa once again. This level is, in a weird way, another tutorial level. It teaches you how to upgrade your weapons, how to get new weapons, how to basically use materia, etc., etc. It teaches the player how to use the marketplace, etc., how to use things, how to fight tougher enemies with these new items, and upgrade. It's good in that aspect. It's also the first level to be the multi-side quest missions level, the levels where you do multiple things in this one area, and you get loads of gil, and you can buy stuff, you can upgrade stuff, you can do whatever. And I do like these sort of levels. I do like them a lot, so it's definitely better than chapter 2. But I will say, this is probably the weakest of the three. Not because it's bad by any means, but because obviously this is early in game, and a lot of the stuff you have to do is very menial. It's not that important. I do like the interactions with Cloud and Tifa in particular. I think this is a great moment to have the two characters reconnect with each other after so long. And I do like the idea that if you do all the missions, you get to select basically what dress Tifa wears when they're with Don Corneo. And I do quite like that aspect. I love the idea of the player having the choice. Because in the original game, for those who don't know, the player did have a lot of choice. And one of the most impactful choices was the dating choice. Now, it's not in this game in particular, but in the original game, you could basically, anything you did, any interaction, any choice you'd make would influence which character you'd go on a date with on the Gold Saucer. And if you completely screwed up, and if you purposely chose certain ones, you'd go on a date with Barrett, which was absolutely hilarious. But if I remember rightly, Aerith was number one with she was already at 50%, whereas Tifa is at 30%, Yuffie is at 5%, and Barrett is at 0%. Which is a fun fact for those that don't know. So it was definitely, so if you didn't want Aerith to be the one on the date, you'd have to lower her score and bring Tifa or Yuffie up, or Barrett up. And if you didn't want or if you just wanted to keep things normal, you'd basically do things normally and you'd just get Aerith default. But I'm on a tangent right there. I do like this idea of reconnecting with an old friend, with an old childhood friend at that matter. And I do like some of the missions. I do like the idea that you do explore Sector 7 and see all the different sort of people there is. There are gangs here, there are, rough people, there are people who just live normal lives. There are these young children who, have best friends who are cats. It's a lot of fun. There's an arms dealer, there's this weird kid, who wants to scan your statistics and what have you. You know, everything about this area is pretty interesting. I love the world building it influences, and it is like a really dirty, rundown place, and it really does show like how poor these people really are, but yet they're living their lives the way they want to live, and they have like a sort of neighborhood watch as well, because obviously they have to keep away the monsters that the Shinra people have accidentally created. I think this is a really good level. I think it's B tier overall. I think it's a B tier level. It's not as good as the first level, and it's not as good as some other levels, but it's a really good level. It does sort of overstay its welcome bit, and there are some moments which I do think I'm not really a fan of. And it is sort of restricted in the area. That is another problem. It's restricted in the area, whereas the other levels are much more wider. What I mean by other levels, I mean by other like side quest, like hub area levels. But nonetheless, I do like this level. All right, chapter 4 shows our first motorbike scene, and I do like this. I do like this chapter a lot. This chapter, for one thing, this chapter does something which the original didn't do, and that is it gives the other Avalanche members some time to shine. You have some character development with Jesse, Wedge, and Biggs, and you actually have them have an actual personality as opposed to be disposable A, B, and C, you know. I do like that aspect. This level really does succeed in that, and I love the fact that you fight a soldier in this, Roche, who is this over-the-top, you know, motorbike obsessed asshole you just absolutely love. I love the idea that he also survived this conflict and he just rides off into the dark, you know. You don't know if you're gonna ever see him again. I hope we do. It'd be interesting if he does reappear. Overall, it's a great level. There's a lot that happens in it as well. You know, you have the motorcycle bit, then you go to Jesse's house, you go to see her father, you collect the important key cards and what have you to gain access to some explosives, and essentially you then fight Roche again. You fight a bunch of Shinra soldiers, and you then leave, and it ends with you back at the slums, and the Whispers have attacked, and the Whispers offer a lot of interest, a lot of intrigue, and you play as Tifa once again, so you're not alone completely in this story, in this level, I should say. I think there's a lot to do with this one, which is why I think this is a much better level than a lot of people would more probably rank it as. I mean, I'm sure some people probably rank it quite lowly because some people might see it as a tangent level, which it sort of is, but it does a good job at, you know, expanding on the other Avalanche members, and I think that really, really does a good job. I really enjoy this level, and for me personally, I think it's let's see, either A or B. I'm gonna say B, but I'm gonna say it's above the previous level, because I think it is slightly better in the aspect that it does do a lot better at character development. I think it does a lot better when it comes to, you know, a lot more to do, if that makes sense, as opposed to just doing a bunch of side missions which are all, you know, kill X monster here, X monster there, you know, achieve X, you know, that sort of stuff. Yeah, I'm going to say it's a high B tier. Chapter 5 is when you're on the rails and you're going through the sort of subways, essentially, and you just have to get to where you need to go. And it's, how do I put it? These 3 chapters should have just been one long chapter. Or at least they should have been either split in half, if that makes sense. Because these 3 are basically the same chapter, but they're all disconnected for the sake of being disconnected. This one is decent in the sense that you do get a lot of enemies to fight, but it's also kind of straightforward. You just go from point A to point B, and then you fight a boss, which is the crab robot. Not much to say about this one. This one's kind of forgettable, if I'm perfectly honest. It's not the most memorable level of them all, but it is fun to upgrade your characters. I think that's the whole point for these 3 levels, is to upgrade Barrett, Tifa, and Cloud, because let's be honest now, you're going to be with Aerith for quite a good chunk of the game, so you're going to need to upgrade these 2 to be a sort of evenly matched, if that makes sense. But yeah, I do quite like this level in that aspect. It is helpful for upgrading characters, you know, upgrading weapons or what have you, getting stuff. But overall, it's kind of a lame level. It's not brilliant. I'm going to put this one down towards the bottom. Not the worst of the worst, but just towards the bottom because I don't think it's that impressive. Sorry. So this is probably going to be the first like low tier, first F tier one, because this one right here is all you're doing is switching on lights. That is about it. And honestly, this is kind of a needless level. This could have been connected to the previous level or connected to the next level. It didn't have to be its own level. This, or you just remove it entirely. I just don't really care for this level as much. It's not that important to the story either. Like, not overly important. All you're doing is sort of like powering things up to get to the other side to do the next bombing. And that's about it. Overall, it's kind of a tedious level. It's a bit of a slog to get through, for one thing. And it's kind of confusing with the layout because you have to go all the way around these lights. And you have to go from point A to point B. And I don't know. I'm not really a fan of this level. And I think it could have been better. I think it could have been either part of the previous level or part of the next level. Or the beginning of the next level, I should say. As opposed to just its own thing. Because it's its own thing, it kind of makes this level very boring to play through. It's probably the only level which I didn't like going through again to collect all the stuff, such as the Chocobo and Moogle summon, which is in this level and is something that I completely forgot about when I first played this game. And I remember just not really enjoying having to go all the way back just to get it. Overall, it's kind of a dull level. It's definitely a filler level, and it's definitely not that enjoyable. Another B tier level, this one, because this is a really, really good level. I'm going to put this... Let's see, I'm going to put this at the top, actually. I think this is much better than Chapter 4. But basically, this level is a build-your-own-boss level. This is the moment when Cloud is separated from Tifa and Barrett, and obviously falls onto the flower bed in the church. This level is quite a lot of fun, really. It's, you're going through individual computer rooms, and you're selecting what bits you want to take out of this boss that you're going to be fighting. And you have to select carefully, because you don't want to select something that is relatively easy to dodge, but you also don't want to select something that is, too insignificant to worry about, because you want to select something that is, going to be tough for you, and you want to make him weaker as a result, or just completely remove something if you feel that way. I always try to balance things out. I try to remove at least one thing from each of them. This one's sort of a short level once again, because for some reason they didn't just combine the previous 3 levels. But hey, this is just a fun level. I do genuinely love the boss fight at the end, and I think for story purposes, this does a really good job. It's obviously a very significant point in the story, and I love the idea of them being so shocked at the fact that Shinra is always one step ahead of them, and them just seeing the president talk to them and all that. It's much better than, say, the president just randomly landing on his helicopter and just talking to them and then getting on the helicopter and flying off like he did in the original, which was kind of funny. I do prefer the hologram that they used here. Made more sense. I think this is a good level. It's just too short, for my opinion, and it should have just been combined with the previous levels. Just saying. And straight up to A tier is this level. This is the moment when you first meet Aerith, and, well, Aerith is probably my favourite character in the game, so I am a little bit biased when it comes to Aerith. This level is just really, really good in general. This level starts off with a boss fight with the Turk Reno, and after you defeat Reno, you go up into towards the attic area, and you escape through the rooftops. And I do genuinely like the fact that they do give a sort of explanation as to why they don't just continue the chase, afterwards. I do like the fact that it's not just Reno that's looking for Aerith, but also Rude and obviously Tseng. This level really does progress a little bit, because you go from this one area, then you go all the way through the junkyards or the junk planes, and you go to Aerith's house. And Aerith's house is just absolutely beautiful in this game. I absolutely love it. You deliver some flowers, this big burly soldier, he has to deliver flowers and all that. I do like the moment that Aerith's mum or adoptive mother sees Cloud, because there's always this PTSD flashback to Zack, which I think is kind of a cool little nod there. The fact that she doesn't want Aerith to be disappointed once again, or to be let down, if that makes sense, which is somewhat ironic considering what happens, but let's not get into that. But yeah, I this level really is good. It's a very long level, and you do a lot of things in it, which is something really, really good. After you do the orphanage bit, you then get the, this is the second of the, do a bunch of side missions, and hey presto, you've done the level. And I do like that, and I think this is a much better one because you do a lot more than just fighting a bunch of enemies. You look for kids, you you do like a little breaking boxes challenge. There's quite a lot of boss fights to do in this. A lot of boss fights. There's a Smogger, there's obviously Reno, and obviously Rude towards the end. Rude, you fight Rude. There's this absolutely adorable cutscene though. This is only if you do all the challenges, mind. It's similar to the Tifa one, where if you do all the challenges, you can basically select the dress for Don Corneo, and in this case, you're doing all the missions, and then you get this like short little cutscene. Aerith, she just talks to the flowers, and Cloud, him being his emotionless, almost autistic self, sort of like looks and thinks, what a weird woman. And then like, of course she realizes that it's, she's just talking to a bunch of inanimate objects, or at least that's what it seems to Cloud. And, Cloud then does something really kind, and he says, be nice to her. And it's that little moment right there is just so precious. I love it. And the level doesn't even end there, because you also then have the conversation with Aerith's mother, and Aerith's mother tells him that she doesn't want her daughter to be disappointed. She doesn't want her daughter to be, upset once again, and so forces Cloud to essentially leave during the night. And Cloud, in Cloud's eyes, Aerith is just a civilian. She shouldn't really be in this conflict, and he's too much of a danger towards her. So of course he abides, and of course you have this moment which reflects into the original, where you have to creep really slowly, even though this area is pretty glitched, because I have in the past not touched a single thing, and all of a sudden a bucket out of nowhere falls, and it's not even in front of me, it's not even towards the side of me, it's behind me. And this area does annoy me a little bit, but it's all right. This level, you know what, I'm not actually going to say it's A tier, I'm actually going to put it in S tier. I absolutely love this level. I genuinely do. This is one of the levels that I love to go back on when I replayed the game, to sort of level up my characters, to prepare for the other side missions and what have you. I genuinely think there's a lot to do in this level, and it's just so good. And I love the world building as well. I love how, you have all these different all these different people at the orphanage and all that. And I love that Aerith is like well known around town, like for being like a helpful person. And of course, Rude referring to Zack at one point, and even Aerith's mother unintentionally referring to Zack. I think this level does a lot. And I absolutely adore it. It's just a great level. Speaking of levels which are deserving of S tier, because this one might as well go straight into S tier, this level is absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love the Wall Markets level. Everything that goes right in this level goes right. I adore it. So what happens here? Essentially, Cloud has fled Aerith's home in secret, but Aerith is already out and about, and she catches Cloud, and the two decide they're going to might as well stick together for a bit as she takes him back home. Obviously, along the way, they have to go through a tunnel, and there's all sorts of creatures, all sorts of decaying smoggers and bandits and what have you, and you have to fight through that. And then you have one of the most infamous scenes in Final Fantasy VII's history, so much so that it was even drawn by the original Final Fantasy artist who used to draw pictures of the Final Fantasy characters in infamous moments, such as this scene right here, where Cloud and Aerith are sat on top of the children's playground slide, and they just have a little conversation. This is when you first find out about Aerith initially having a boyfriend, and this boyfriend was in Soldier, and this soldier never came back, and of course she looks at Cloud and she sees him in him, which is obviously reflecting on the fact that although in this game it is revealed that it is Zack straight away. In the original, it was never. All she said was it was never serious, so she's always like played it off. Here she does sort of say it quite bluntly, which is why. Which I don't know. I kind of preferred the whole, she sort of hides her emotions, if that makes sense. I preferred that in the original. Won't lie. But nonetheless, this is just a sweet scene. I love this scene. Everyone loves this scene. It's a famous scene. And of course, as they're about to say goodbye, awkwardly, Tifa comes past, and Tifa's in a dress, and Cloud is curious as to why Tifa is in a dress, what's going on, and that's when they find out about Don Corneo, who has intel on Shinra and a plan to basically bring down Sector 7, blow up the plates. And of course, Cloud and Aerith decide that they're going to help Tifa, and basically you go through the war market. It's so lively, there's so much stuff. It's a complete contrast to the previous areas, which have been a lot more quieter, a lot more civil, dare I say, and this one's a lot more lively, a lot more boisterous, and there's a lot of things you can do. For example, there are two ways of playing this level. There's one way where you I forgot the guy's name. Damn, I forgot the guy's name, but you meet him again, the redhead guy with the spiky hair. He's a bit of a lunatic. You meet him again, or you could fight a bunch of bandits and you meet the guardian of the slums. I quite like that aspect to it. But I also like the fact that, all these characters are very colourful. You've got Chocobo Sam, you've got Madame M, and Antonio, and of course, Anton, I meant. It's also very interesting that, depending on what you do, you can, get a better dress for Aerith, or you get a mediocre dress, or just a simple dress. And, it depends on the sort of massage you get as well. Massage in quotation marks. But let's be honest now, the best part about this level has to be the Colosseum part. I absolutely love this Colosseum battle. I love it so much. Cloud and Aerith, they go in and they're the underdogs. No one has a hope in hell for these two. They call them names and what have you, and they kick everyone's asses. And obviously, Chocobo Sam and Anton, I always forget the guy's name. He's not impressed, and Don Corneo also orders for another battle, and this is when you fight the Hell House, which is one of the more goofier and strangest enemies from the original game. Is treated like a goddamn threat in this, and the Hell House palette is just absolutely fantastic. Sure, the first time when I played it, I didn't do very well, but nowadays, now I play it again, the Hell House is quite easy to battle, and I absolutely love this fight so much. It changes elements, it does a lot, it transforms and shapeshifts. It's just a fantastic battle. I absolutely love this fight so much. And I also love the fact that the audience slowly get on Cloud and Aerith's side. I love some of the commentary as well. What was it? A date night of disaster or something like that. They also refer to them as lovebirds and what have you. Don't know why. I mean, I'm just saying, they never said anything official, just saying. But there's also a guy screaming marry me, Aerith, or Cloud, I want your babies, and all that shit. It's goofy shit like that, and I just love the commentary between from the commentators of the fights as well, because they also the dialogue they give out is unique and different, and it's just such a great moment. I love this Colosseum fight so much. This Colosseum fight is probably the reason why this is an S tier, because aside from that, you get loads of stuff to do. Now, once you've done all that, you eventually see Aerith in her dress, and if you've done anything correctly, you get to see her in this big, beautiful red dress, and Cloud is honestly stunned. He is whoa. This is probably the only few times where Cloud actually shows emotion, which is interesting, because Cloud always shows emotion when Aerith is about. Despite the fact that he's only just met this girl, he's immediately enthralled. Obviously Aerith has another plan, and this plan is to get Cloud in to be one of the selections for Don Cleo, and the B scene. The B scene is just It's so goofy. It's goofy but brilliant. I love it. And it's a catchy song as well. I love that afterwards when Cloud is a woman dressed as a woman, he just refuses to talk to Aerith. He's like so pissed off that he walks ahead and she keeps trying to nag him. Hey, Cloud, are you all right? Cloud, you know, and he's just not a word. He's just, I love the anger for emanating from him. And then, of course, you finally meet Tifa, and yeah, even then, like, Cloud's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. Yeah, and of course I do like that Tifa and Aerith, like, at first they seem a bit, like, hesitant towards each other. Like, Tifa's a bit shocked that Cloud is all of a sudden with this woman is, like, hugging his arm and all that. And, you know, Aerith is just overly welcoming of everyone and everything. And, of course, the two in the next level, spoiler alert, do get along really well, and I love the connection they have with each other. I do like that aspect. And, of course, Cloud is selected. Tifa and Aerith kick the asses of Don Cornelius' men and go ahead to meet up with Cloud. Cloud gets undressed and dressed up in front of Don Cornelio, and of course then they get dumped into the sewers. Overall, just a fantastic level. I've spoken so long about this one as well. Holy shit. But this is just really good. S tier for sure. So it's time for the sewer level, the sewer chapter now. And the sewer chapter is really, really good. I actually do genuinely enjoy this level. It's an extended version of the original, obviously. There's a lot more to do, a lot more to be around, and a lot more fights taking place. And I do love this level for one particular reason. The connection between the characters, especially towards Aerith and Tifa. I love the fact that those two, you know, have a bit more development and start talking to each other a bit more. I do genuinely love that aspect. I really, really do. And I love that, you know, because in the original, those two never really, how do I put it? They never really spoke to each other much. There was never really that much of a deep connection with those two. You know, most of the Aerith stuff was with Cloud, and or Sephiroth. But it was never really with any other character. And so in this, they've done a better job. They've obviously decided, you know what, every character deserves to have like a chance to talk to one another and to interact and to show their established relations. And I think that really works well. I think that works seriously well. And in this particular level, I genuinely like that aspect. I do like the boss fights as well. I think the boss fights are really good, and I love like the sort of enemy variety as well. There's a lot of enemies you fight. And it's not like an easy job to get from one side to another, but obviously they succeed and they eventually lead the sewers. It's a shorter level, but it's a really good level, and I absolutely love this level. I'm actually going to put it in high B tier. I'm actually going to put it at the top as well. It seems like they're going one over the other. But this one's really good. This one's really, really good. I like this one. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not going to put it in B tier. I'm going to put it in A tier. Yep, I'm going to put it in A tier. Because I genuinely think this is a good level in terms of characterization. I think it's got a lot to do, but it's also a expanded version of what happened in the original, and you know, it gives it a bit more purpose as opposed to just being this like blip in the original, which is something that I really, really do admire. And the character and the enemy variety is really, really cool. Even if the sewer system itself can get a little bit confusing, and it is technically a sewer level, and sewer levels are never that impressive, but this one is pretty good, in my opinion. Chapter 11 is a weird level, all things considered, but in terms of characters, this is a really effective one. It shows the characters' deepest fears, it shows their isolation, and shows how really connected they really are, because Tifa, Aerith, and Cloud are very similar towards one another. You know, all three of them are, in a way, lonely characters, and yet all three of them, well, I say all three of them, yeah, all three of them sort of hide their emotions. Tifa less so, I'd argue, because Tifa is a lot more emotive, but, you know, Aerith, for one thing, hides it under like a big smile and pretends everything's happy and hunky-dory, when, you know, reality, she's probably really hurting inside. And Cloud, you know, he's just this blank slate that doesn't have any goddamn emotion, but deep down he's really suffering. Like, this is a good level to exploit that. And the idea of this ghost graveyard, this train graveyard being this ghostly area, it's a really cool level. It's kind of pointless though, I won't lie. It's not necessary to the whole overall story. I do think the boss fight at the end is really, really cool and really amazing. But overall, it's kind of a sort of level. It's not something that you're going to remember at all. It's kind of okay-ish. Overall, I think it's a good level. It's just, it could have been better. It kind of suffers from the aspect that it's kind of unnecessary. And, you gotta understand, these characters are meant to be racing for, they're against the clock. They have to get to Sector 7. They have to stop them from blowing up the plate, from killing tens of thousands of people for the sake of just destroying Avalanche. And yet here they are just dawdling about in a train graveyard. Although they are, in a way, against their own will because the ghosts are working against them. It's an okay level. It's not brilliant at all, but it does serve one good purpose, and that is the characterization. The characterization is fantastic. It's going to go into C tier. It's an okay level, but it's kind of pointless, but it's also got really good characterization, which is the problem. I like the characterization a lot. And now for the moment where everyone dies. Or do they? I do quite like this level a lot. I like that it expands it a little bit more, because now we've gotten used to Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse as opposed to in the original where they were just disposable characters. Here they've got characters. And so it's a lot more emotional when you see them dying, when you see them hurt, when you see them, on their last legs, taking their last breaths. It is a lot more emotive this time around. I think the biggest problems with this level is that it is kind of short, but then again, what else can you do? I do like some of the changes they have made from the original, though. I do like the fact that, people are being evacuated, not, tens of thousands of people aren't just being crushed to death here and there. People are evacuating, they are trying to escape, and they, obviously not everyone's going to be saved, but most people have been saved. I do like the idea that there is a bit more to do with Aerith, rescuing Marlene and then being captured by the Turks. The boss fight with the Turks themselves is just phenomenal. I absolutely love this fight so much. And, obviously it ends with the plate being blown up and loads of people being crushed to death and Barrett thinking that Marlene is dead, but obviously Aerith, rescued her. This is a really good level. It's a really, really good level. I don't know where I'm going to place it, though. I think I might place it... I'm actually going to put it at the top of B tier because it is... No, actually, you know what? No, I'm going to put it at the bottom of A tier because it is a really, really good level and it's really effective with what it does. It's helped out by the previous levels and it's just really a lot of fun. It's a genuinely fun level. It's a depressing level in many ways. I also love the fact that Cat She... That's how you meant to pronounce it. Cat She actually has a cameo in this, because obviously Cat She will play a much larger role later on. And he is one of the more important characters, interestingly. But I do genuinely like that little cameo of Cat She up near towards the end. That is a great moment. I love the fight with Rude and Reno, even if now you're a little bit more stronger. It's a little bit easier to take them out both on. But yeah, it's just a great moment. It's a great moment and it's an impactful moment in the story. It's one of the most impactful moments. I love it. I genuinely love it. And I love the inclusion of what Aerith is doing. And I love the fact that, Wedge actually does a bit more as opposed to being the fat goofball. Even though I really don't like the character Wedge personally. And Biggs and Jesse's deaths are pretty emotional. Well, I say Biggs and Jesse's. Biggs is debatable considering the end. Spoiler alert. And after that great level comes probably the worst level in the entire game. This is going straight to the bottom. This is not that great. This is the only level which I can safely say I do not like. So let's see. It starts off with Barrett, moping and doping about Marlene being dead, even though Aerith literally said that she had rescued Marlene on the screen and, somehow he didn't catch that. Of course, Barrett, now excited with this news, decides to go over to Aerith's house because Cloud knows the way, and that's when they meet Marlene again. Marlene is perfectly safe, and you get the backstory for Aerith, and, obviously that bit is vital, it's important. I do like that bit. That is where the good parts of this level ends, because the rest of it is just... I hate it. So they decide to go back. They're going to find Wedge. Wedge somehow is alive. I don't know how this fat bastard who is unhealthy in every single way is somehow alive. I genuinely don't like Wedge. Wedge is somehow alive. And, you end up finding an underground facility where all the monsters have been created, and you find out these, like, genetic experiment failed clones and what have you. And you fight them. You play as Barrett for a bit, and Barrett is not as fun to play as in comparison to Aerith or Cloud, because you haven't played as Tifa yet at this moment in time. You do play as Tifa a little bit later, but yeah, at this moment in time, Barrett is not that enjoyable. Most of the stuff you're going to be doing is with Tifa, because Tifa delivers a lot of hard blows. Yeah, I just said that, didn't I? Yeah, Tifa delivers a lot of hard blows. Okay, I should stop being childish. So Barrett is not that fun to play as. He's slow, and I don't really like the Gatling gun as much. Especially when you're fighting like faster enemies. A slow character with fast enemies is not a fun thing to do, not fun time. It's just a really dull level, and it's kind of pointless. I really don't see the purpose of this other than it gives Aerith its backstory, and obviously, you have Wedge being alive for some reason. Overall, it just feels like a filler level. It really feels like a filler level, and that's all that I can say about it. It's a filler level, a massive one at that. So for probably the longest level, I believe. So this one does make me laugh a little bit, because I always think, Aerith is there waiting, presumably for rescue. And here's the gang just doing a bunch of side missions as she's most likely could possibly be tortured and experimented on. Horrible things could be happening to her right now. But this level, this level is a fun level. This is definitely a fun level. It's definitely a long level, and it's definitely pointless in a way, because, the characters should really just go from, Aerith's house all the way to rescue Aerith. But, you need to have a level there. You need to have some stuff. So as a result, this is definitely going to high C tier. And the reason why I say high C tier is because the opening cutscene, which I'm sure a lot of people know what I'm talking about, that cutscene is absolutely... I just love it. It's a beautiful cutscene. It's an eerily beautiful cutscene. Because it's also the cutscene which sort of implies that Aerith knows what's going to happen. And she, may or may not be from this timeline, if that makes sense. The cutscene where Cloud, he's thinking, he goes to sleep and he dreams of Aerith. And this is something that will happen again. Well, it happens again in the original, shortly before Sephiroth decides to, you know what he's going to do. You know what's going to happen. But I digress. He sees Aerith, and Aerith talks to him. And obviously, this is the scene where Aerith does say to Cloud, you shouldn't fall in love with me. And Cloud basically says, no. He says, don't I get a choice? And, he says then he's going to come after her, he's going to rescue her, and of course, it's essentially saying I love you without saying I love you, and I do find that absolutely heartwarming. I'm sure there's quite a few Cloud and Tifa fans which probably weren't happy about that, but they'll get their chance once Sephiroth decides to penetrate Aerith, kebab her. But nonetheless, this that cutscene alone is a saving grace. And I do like the side missions as well. The side missions are a lot of fun. The side missions are varied. You have the whole map more or less to explore now, and you can get chocobos you can ride. You don't ride them necessarily, you just use them for fast travel, and I do like that. You have to rescue the chocobos first, mind you. There's a lot to do in this level, and I do like that. It's this is why it's a high C tier, because it's a pointless level, but it has a lot to do. And I love this moment at the end where you meet Leslie again, the guy who's guarding Don Corneo's door. And, he reveals some backstory, and he's just he's a victim of Don Corneo in a way, Well, his girlfriend certainly was. And, you know, he just wants to grab this one little thing to, you know, remember her by, to, you know, that belonged to her, to keep for him forever. And, you know, he also, like, tells Cloud, like, you know, you gotta rescue this girl, Aerith, you know, to rescue Aerith and all that. Not make the same mistakes, more or less. And, you know, it's a really sweet scene. Really, it almost does reflect on Cloud and Aerith in a way, because obviously Aerith does, in the original, die. I don't know if she's going to die in this new one. But in the original, she does die. And Cloud, you know, he does go off the deep end a bit. I mean, in Avalanche Children, like, even though in Avalanche Children, like, he's meant to, like, be living a normal life now, you know, he's even got adopted children now, you know, he just goes back to the church and he just becomes a recluse, you know. It's kind of interesting to see that dynamic from, like, an ordinary person, more or less, in Leslie. I don't know if I should really put this in C tier. I think I might put it in low B tier, because whilst it is a pointless level, it is very, very good. Like, I don't know, I like this level on a personal scale, but objectively it shouldn't be that high. It shouldn't be. But nonetheless, it's got a lot of things to do, you know. Even towards the end of the level, you know, still got stuff to do. You can do workouts, you can, you know, find all the treasure of Don Corneo, you know, you have to fight this what is it called, this Seraphim Prince. Really cool stuff. I love this level, really cool, absolutely amazing. But objectively, if I'm going to be objective, it is pointless. It isn't necessary to the story, and it does sort of have that hindrance. But the beginning cutscene, the one that everyone knows now, absolutely phenomenal. I love that beginning cutscene so much, and I'm so glad I got that as a thumbnail. So this is the sort of break, if that makes sense, between the next big level. Basically, you're getting yourself all the way up, and this time you're fighting a bunch of aerial enemies, which can be a little bit annoying for Tifa and Cloud, because they are grounded characters, whereas Barrett, you know, he can just shoot them out of the sky, which is fine for him. This level is pretty short. There's not really much to talk about. All you're doing is getting up to the surface to go to Shinra's headquarters. There's not really much to say. It's a C tier. I'm going to say that right now. It's a C tier. It's just kind of there. It's a fun level, don't get me wrong. I love the fights with the enemies, and it does serve a purpose that you are getting towards your location, but at the same time, it's kind of pointless. It's kind of unnecessary to the whole, you know, grand scheme thing. It could have been connected to the previous level. Like, if it was connected to the previous level, it would have made it even bigger and even longer, but it would have made some sense. And I do like the idea of looking down and seeing the devastation of what has happened, what this conflict is bringing about. And as we get closer and closer, and we have this big boss fight, and this boss fight is pretty cool. It's pretty easy, but it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's an okay level. It's just very, very much a C tier level. So this is an example of what to do with the previous levels. What they should have done is they should have just had 2 long levels and split them up in halves. And in this case, this is the level where you're basically going up the building to find Aerith. And it's quite funny because you have like 2 ways of doing things. You can either go up the stairs, which I did in my long play, or you can just take the elevator. You know, if you take the elevator, you fight a bunch of enemies. If you go up the stairs, you just have this really long and rather funny moment where they're all struggling to go up the stairs after so long. Yeah, that is quite funny. This level is basically very important in terms of getting up to Aerith. You don't fight many enemies, mind. You don't really fight all too much, and of course you do find out that the mayor is involved, and he supports Avalanche's resistance against Shinra. And of course, he's been watching everyone, and that's why you've not really had any attacks or any battles. I love this moment where you go through this area where you have, you know, all this museum essentially showing off like all the different like heads of Shinra, and you know, you find out a bit of backstory, a bit of world building. It's a really cool level in that aspect. I think the problem with this level is it's a lot of traveling. There's not a lot of battling. There's not a lot of action, but it's a lot of traveling, so that might deteriorate a bit. But overall, it's definitely an enjoyable level. It's definitely a colourful level. I think overall, this is definitely a high C tier. It's not that particularly memorable in comparison to the next level, which is a lot more memorable and a lot more action packed. But there is a lot more story building. There's a lot more to do with story, and this is a very important level in that aspect. And of course, eventually you fight Hojo's mutant, and you then meet Red, and you reunite with Aerith. So that's great in that aspect. Overall, it's not particularly memorable because it is a lot more story building or walking as opposed to actually fighting in battles and challenging things. But it does have a lot of moments which are important, like meeting Red for the first time, Hojo, and obviously reuniting with Aerith and figuring out what their plans with Aerith were. And of course, you rescue her from that fate, which is awesome. I like this level, but it's definitely high C tier. As for the second half of the Shinra building, or the Shinra headquarters levels, this one is action-packed. This is non-stop fight after fight after fight after fight. And it is also pretty epic at the same time because you meet Jenova, who is arguably the true main villain of Final Fantasy VII. A lot of people have said Jenova is more of the main villain than Sephiroth is, because Jenova is the one pulling all the strings. Jenova is the one that plans everything out. I think this is a fantastic level because, you meet Jenova, sort of, and a lot of things happen. Like, for one thing, you escape from Hojo's laboratory. You fight one of the, what are they called? The Swordpedes, which were an enemy in the original, which I'm so glad they brought back in this. They're great. You see all the mutant creatures that Hojo has created, all the robots and what have you. It's a lot of the robots. You then meet the president, and it turns out he's been attacked. And it turns out Sephiroth is back. And of course, Sephiroth appears and kills the president. And there's this one bit which I thought was really interesting. And that is when Sephiroth stabs Barrett. Now, for those that don't know, originally, in the original Final Fantasy VII, Barrett was going to be the character that was going to die. He was going to be the one that was going to be killed by Sephiroth. However, the reason why they didn't go with Barrett was because they didn't think that Barrett had that much of a connection with Cloud. So they decided that Aerith should be the one that gets the axe. Because Aerith has a lot more of a connection, much more of a deeper connection with Cloud. More of a, dare I say, romantic connection with Cloud. And so killing her would just destroy him more so than, Cloud's black best friend. And I do like that sort of reference there. And I'm kind of glad that we do fight Jenova Dreamweaver with Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith, because those three are probably the best characters as players. Barrett is alright, but compared to Aerith and Tifa, they're better helpers in my opinion. But yeah, you fight Jenova. Genova's a fantastic fight. I love the music in this boss fight. It is fantastic. But after you fight Jenova, Sephiroth flies away, and of course you got all the whispers and all his clones about. And of course Rufus appears, and then you have a fight with Rufus, and you fight Rufus on a 1-to-1, which is a great fight. Also, there's a lot going on, and of course meanwhile Barrett, Red, and Aerith are going down the elevator, and they get attacked by a robot. You have to fight a robot. There's just so much, and so much is happening, and it is so epic. It is so awesome. It is A tier for sure. Would I say it's top A tier? I would say it's in the middle, because it is a fantastic level, but, and this is a big but, it's a little bit too action-packed and less so with the story, if that makes sense. Whereas the previous one was too much story and less action, this is too much action and less story. So I feel like there should have been a balance between the two, but it is sort of like a split in half level, and overall, it's a fantastic one. This is just truly fantastic. I love all the fights you do in this. Truly great. And lastly is the final chapter, Chapter 18. Chapter 18 is very, very good. It's very short in a way. You don't do a lot. You first on the motorcycle chase. It's highway chase from the original. Absolutely fantastic. I love the highway chase in the original. I love the highway chase here. I actually prefer the boss fight in the original, though. I do think the boss fight in the original was far better. But that said, this is still a decent boss fight. Of course, we then get to the big twist. The big twist being that Sephiroth is manipulating the time stream or the timeline and is manipulating destiny. As such, they are going to go over and they're going to try and fight Sephiroth, but at the same time, they also manipulate destiny. So, of course, you fight these large whisper things. I forgot what they're called. Whisper Guardians, I'm just going to call them. But they're fantastic. It's a fantastic fight, these ones. Obviously, they're just the taster for, well, what's to come. And that is the Sephiroth boss fight itself. The Sephiroth boss fight is absolutely phenomenal. I love this fight. He's tough, obviously. He deals a huge amount of damage, obviously. But he isn't impossible to defeat. And I love how he gets in these different stages. He goes from a relatively decent sword fight stage to then using a lot more magical powers to then, using elemental powers. And then, his final stage is just bringing down a fucking meteor on your head. And that's just amazing. So yeah, that's great. This is a great finale. Is it the best? No, it isn't. It's definitely an A tier. It's definitely second to top, second place A tier, because it is really good, but it does, it is rather short. Nonetheless, it's a fantastic level. I do like the idea that this does change up the timeline. Now, I know this is quite controversial in some aspects because some people prefer things to be pure, but I don't mind having a sort of impure timeline because, Kingdom Hearts also did it. Kingdom Hearts is a different timeline where Aerith survived. Overall, I think this is just a great level. I think this is a great finale and a great moment. And I don't know about you, but I've always had, Aerith and Tifa as my partners in this. I've never had Barrett, ever. But nonetheless, this is truly a great moment and a truly great fight, and it leads into the finale, which obviously is this end credits where Zack may have been resurrected, as have Biggs. For some reason, Jesse wasn't, but then again, I think Cloud might have had enough of Jesse's shit. Overall, what a fantastic end. A fantastic end to a fantastic game. And I love the song Hollow. Hollow is just great. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this ranking. Don't know if you agree or disagree. Maybe you completely disagree and have a different ranking. Or maybe you agree. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.